Good evening, everybody. This is day 1,100 days since Richard vanished from the barracks there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And yesterday, let me see if I'm on here. I'm looking on Facebook so I can answer. I see myself. Okay. Turn it down. Okay, so if anybody would like to ask a question, I'll be glad to try to answer it. Um, I know this case pretty well, and with more and more exposure, um, inch by inch, morsel by morsel, we did that the Hansel and Gretel, um, Operation Hansel and Gretel, morsel by morsel. We'll piece this all together, and it will lead us to what happened to Richard's remains at this point, because we're at over 3 years, and we have so much evidence, hard facts, hard evidence that shows so much wrongdoing, obstruction of justice, denying us due process, um, not being forthright with us, not contacting us, um, and the lies and the lies and the lies that it's very obvious that something is being covered up here, and it's very obvious that it's something very, very bad. It's really the Guillen situation, right? It's the Guillen situation. It's Richard is the Vanessa Guillen first absent soldier. We formulated that from because he was designated on the 25th of November for a short time, I believe, just to get through that time period legally. He was designated as the first CONUS Dust 1 missing soldier under the new Vanessa Guillen flowchart. So we, just so people understand, because Dust 1 duty status whereabouts unknown, CONUS, Continental United States, all these acronyms might be confusing. So we just say the Vanessa Guillen first absent soldier. It makes it more understandable. And I believe at this point that his designation has been changed to deceased, or died while missing. I believe his designation at a certain time was died while missing because of legalities, because of step by step what has happened in the timeline. I believe that they've had to shuffle between AWOL to deserter to died while missing, deceased, and then just one duty status, whereabouts unknown. They've had to shuffle through all of that, um, and now deceased because of his remains being found by the FBI, partial remains. Also, we have information, we have these autopsy reports that have not been officially denied by the command. So these are showing fragmented parts found in Mexico, along with partial remains on the 28th, 29th. There's conflicting information on that of July of 2020 at Red Rio Range, and then again on the 7th of August. 6th of August was also a big day of a confession. And then the 10th of August was the release of the autopsy findings, which were positive for Richard Halliday. And yet we can't get a confirmation or denial on that information, on that autopsy. And all they would have to do would send us a letter from Dr. Raskin Ortiz, um, and that would, clarify. And you would think that in this situation, in this very difficult situation, that the command would um, be or and could do these things for us, you know. But they're angry. That's what we're getting. They're angry, and because you see, they're implicated. The generals are implicated, and there's many people involved in this, and a very high level person involved in this that absolutely is key in the cover up of the um, the murder of Richard, and the cover up of Richard, the the many levels of cover up of Richard would be Thomas Kane, you see, because being the director of emergency services, um, being the chief of security of Fort Bliss, he has the access to the surveillance videos, to this case, to all of the gates going in and out, to all the guards at all the gates. He is the one that would give all the passes to get it on and off, including to Leilani Hart, and other contractors, to James Hart, to Jay Pollan, to well, Jay Pollan, he's retired, whatever. Um, but you see, he has that kind of power in Richard's case, in that very, very important time frame when he went missing. And so, of course, he is a very important person in our son's case. And when we found out, um, let's just say it has taken us so much time to reach everybody because of we are the investigators in Richard. We are Richard's advocate. We are Richard's social media. So we're the media for Richard's case. We are also really the legal researchers, the PI, the boots on the ground, you name it. We've done all these things for Richard's case because we've been betrayed by the very institution that should take care of these things for us. Um, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe had a single promise to us, and that was that every month he would have Richard's announcement um, in a media, in a PAO announcement, that he would put out, and he couldn't even fulfill that for Richard. He couldn't even do that for us. I mean, the level of cold bloodedness, the level of the lack of duty, and you see, he got a third star for his obstruction of justice, his denial of due process, um, and those are allegations that we have. We have a lot of allegations against Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe because we were there um, during that. He he went along. He went along with that fake stage task force find Richard Halliday meeting that was fraud, waste, and abuse on an immense scale because there were 30 agencies, sorry, 15 agencies present, 30 people, 30 about 30 people were there, and we have witnesses, and they were out of uniform. So it was not official. There was no operational order. So, yes, of course, Sean Bernabe is up to no good. He should be stripped of his uniform. He should be stripped of his stars. He should be stripped of every award in this time frame that he received. Um, Absolutely, it's appalling what these generals have done. And you see, Thomas Kane um, collaborated, of course. He's totally up to no good, betrayed us as well. And it's not like some young person that's just trying to make it. You know, he's in his late 60s. Okay? He is a seasoned well, he's a retired soldier, officer, and he's a seasoned law enforcement officer. And he knows Fort Bliss. And he was given every opportunity to help us. But he could not, I'm going to make an excuse for him. There's no really excuses, but I'm going to make an excuse for him because he screwed up. He messed up in many ways. He messed up. Like many. Like many. But he could never have gotten away with it without collaborating and getting the blessing from the generals. And General Bernabe could never have gotten away with what he did without the blessing of General McConville and General Garrett and probably General Mealy. And it might have been political, like, you know, the politics pulling on the strings of our generals, but they don't have to do it. They have the military behind them. And yet these generals have betrayed every one of our service members. And that's why our service members are committing suicide. We have, 8 suicides in 7 months on Fort Bliss. They are committing suicide at such a fast rate. The esprit de corps is not being taught. It's not there because the generals have betrayed every service member. Every service member. And I hope, and this is an attempt to reach out to every service member, to let them know that their cries, their fearful cries because they've been retaliated against unjustly, because they haven't been trained the way they were told that they were going to be trained. They're not belonging to an institution, an organization, a military that they were told by the recruiters, by the advertisements, by the creeds. They have been betrayed. And the covenant has been broken between the generals, and not all the generals, but every last one of the 44 four-star generals and admirals. 44 four-star generals and admirals. The billets, which are it's so bloated. And we pay for it. And they really work for us, but they don't. You see, this is the point that I want to make. All of this can go away tomorrow, you know. But as Tom Kane pointed out, and I want to read his letter again that I posted yesterday because I think it's very, very telling what he's saying. And I don't think I even read it yesterday. So let me go to it and read it. Let's see if I think it's very, very important. Let's see. I think I'm not very good at this, y'all. Okay, here we go. and I will display it. So here it is. Oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. Let me do this. I think I just messed up a little bit, but that's okay. Everyone knows. Everyone knows. And it's so sad. Everyone knows. I, Thomas Kane. This is to dear General Eisenhower. I, Thomas Kane, Chief of Physical Security, Directorate of Emergency Services, recently retired after serving for 15 years on 30 June 2023. And it came to my attention that a legally deficient action was taken to ban the key witness and a key witness in Richard Halliday's case on January 31st, 2023. And that action was signed by James A. Brady, a Colonel, U.S. Army, commanding. That order was effected with several irregularities and without adherence to proper protocol. And after having personally reviewed the basis for the order, it appears that it is without basis. The irregularities are as follows. A key witness in Richard Halliday's case was never notified. 2. Key witness, I'm not going to read the name, I'm just going to say key witness in Richard Halliday's case was never contacted for any statements regarding an investigation. 3. An investigation was never properly conducted. 4. There was no opportunity to challenge any evidence or witnesses. 5. There was no corroboration of allegations. And 6. The individual who are subject for banment or administrative action are afforded an opportunity to present and mitigate elements for consideration under provision HSPD-12 and AR 190-13, or allowing him to submit mitigation factors for your consideration. There was never any attempt to notify the key witness of the determination. So this is so criminal, y'all. They never notified us that our son was missing. And you see, this is so against the Constitution. And I am, one of those grandmas, the Gigi, at January 6th with the pocket Constitution. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it has really, I think that Delirious, and I'm going to talk about her just for a second, absolutely found out that we are not glued to a certain party. Okay, will we Team Find Richard Halliday, for the most part, I think, for the most part, what I've heard, vote for President Trump in 2024? I mean, I don't even know if he really needs to go out there on the campaign trail, because we're going to vote for him. Nothing will change our mind at this point. Nothing. Because of January 6th. Because of what we witnessed on January 6th. And the response thereof that was absolutely a false narrative. And, I try to be as truthful as I possibly can. I need to read the rest. Um, the above irregularities, along with the fact um, that the key witness is a whistleblower who filed a CID complaint, also an FBI complaint, also, yeah, this is really jaw dropping, in writing and copied Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe on January 18th, 2022. January 18th, 2022, against Leilani Hart, the person who brought the false allegations against the key witness a year later, which may be interpreted that the ban is retaliatory in nature. The matter is connected to the Richard Halliday disappearance. As a result of the above, it appears that you were not properly briefed on this matter and that it may have violated the civil rights of the key witness, and I would urge you to review this ban and consider retracting it, since at this time, in order to protect the installation from any inquiry or liability. Sincerely, Thomas Kane. So I think that is absolutely jaw dropping, because as early as January 18th, 2022, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe had in his hands allegations of bodily harm against our son. Okay? I don't remember getting a call then from Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe. That's obstruction of justice in my book, because he did not click heels together to bring the key witness in for questioning. Never. And Thomas Kane, you know, we wrote him. You see, he knew. It's his business to know about the security of Fort Bliss. It's his business to know if Leilani Hart, who on the 22nd of July, 2020, submitted CID complaints that rattled CID, because James Hart told me. James Hart told me that they were investigating for sexual things. And then I found out later it was about a 7-year-old child being sexually assaulted in the master bedroom by multiple members of her household, and that her son was, while active duty there at Fort Bliss, serving with Richard, engaged in incestuous relationships, and that they had child pornography. Okay, and that's just, all of this is just the tip of the iceberg. And the thing is Thomas Kane taught at Park University right there on Fort Bliss. It's a small university. We checked it out. All the teachers know the students. All the students know the teachers. So we have intel from within Fort Bliss. And they said, absolutely. And we also know that Leilani Hart doesn't have that great of a reputation there at Park University, that she was causing some trouble. She was up to no good. And so we're trying to figure out all of that because you have Thomas Kane, the chief of security for Fort Bliss, right? The chief of security for Fort Bliss, director of emergency services. You have this emergency intake center. You have this problem with 85,000 at that time, 10,000. It doesn't matter if it's 5, if it's 1,000, if it's 15,000, if it's 20,000, if it's 85,000 unaccounted for minors, it's a problem. You have the problem with childcare. You have Hart's childcare. You have a child being sexually assaulted in Leilani Hart's master bedroom. You have child porn continuously, long periods of time. You have James Hart being accused. That came from James Hart. That's not from me. That was from James Hart. Okay, I'm not the bad guy in this. I'm just telling you what I was told. And Thomas Kane knows Leilani Hart because she was a student there at Park University. And from our intel from within Fort Bliss, the teachers know the students and the students know the teachers because it's not that big and it's in law enforcement. And you know what? I was wondering, did Richard ever sign up to be a student at Park University? Because remember, Richard wanted to go into CID. He wanted to go into law enforcement. And I'm just wondering if he went onto that campus, if he went in there to sign up. So we're going to try to find that out. But getting back to Thomas Kane. Thomas Kane, now from our intel in Fort Bliss, okay? He has a conflict of interest. Because was Leilani Hart ever his student? And why is the director of emergency services? I don't know. Maybe there's a good reason. But I don't understand this. Why is he teaching at the university there on Fort Bliss? Because, you see, it caused trouble. It caused trouble. And that's what we're hearing. It caused some trouble, and it caused disloyalty problems. Because remember, you have this sexual cult thing going on, right? It's beyond loose sex. It is like a sexual cult. It is a grooming. It is a way to connect people in authority together in a loyalty pack or something. And because once you find out who is who, and you have CID, you have CPS, you have JAG, you have Park University, you have the the director of emergency services, you have the generals, the command, you have contractors, and I know I'm forgetting some other very vital, important things. I wonder if the MPs are involved. right? Uh, and I know I'm forgetting some other things, but things start getting really stinky and criminal, and they forget that they work for the American people and that they're on the American people's dime. Sorry, y'all. I've been talking all day. I see a lot of comments. Let me read them. Thank you, Anicia, for coming on. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Kat, for sharing. Thank you so much. Thank you. And, all of this is so stinky. And what it declares is that the generals, the 44 four-star generals, don't have a will and don't have a good reason to clean this up, to make this right. So, what possible reason do they have to keep this going? To keep it ugly? To keep it stinky and smelly? To keep, people's jobs are at risk, right? They're at risk. And these generals, these 44 four-star generals and admirals, they're letting it happen because of what happened with the emergency intake center. That was the admirals, y'all. Doesn't have to be Army, right? I learned that from Congress. The Congress said the admirals weren't in charge of the emergency intake center on Fort Bliss. And you have the absolute development of a criminal syndicate, including the JAG, the CPS, the command, the security, right? The security of Fort Bliss, the CID, the MPs. You've got this collusion into criminal activities. And it's a sweet deal because, and I would even say the import export, mainly export. That's all included in this too, y'all. You wouldn't believe it. The intel that's coming out of Fort Bliss about this criminal syndicate is jaw dropping. And I think, all of it could be cleaned up in a heartbeat. Richard could be found in 24 hours. But you see, he's been brutally murdered, tortured, murdered, and dismembered. And they only have partial remains and fragmented remains. And there is access to certain locations there on Fort Bliss that Thomas Kane has access to. And all of this, it could go away by producing Richard. But see, they can't because there's no letters to deny or to straighten out the information that we have sent from the phone calls that we traced that implicate the government. The autopsy reports the locations, and now we have, and there's so much, we have the employee for the FBI, we have the key witness, which is an officer of the court, against Leilani Hart, who's works for a contractor, right? At that time, she worked for a contractor. Who did she work for? Was it? There's many. Um, it's just such a wild web of proof after proof after proof after proof, and we're at 1,100 days. And where is our summary from CID Quantico that they said, oh, you'll have it at Friday? This was what, months ago? We're still waiting for that Friday. And the anger from everybody, the anger from those involved, that they pull out, I call them witches because they are, I didn't call them a witch. I'm calling them by the name they gave themselves. They declared themselves witches. So I'm like, okay, what are they going to pull out of their cauldron at, over 1,000 days? What are they going to pull out? Right? What kind of accusations? What kind of retaliations are they going to do? They're going to do it. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so it's really ridiculous for me to even focus on them when it all could go away and be answered by Major General Eisenhower, by Lieutenant General Bernabe, by Brigadier General Stewart, by Lieutenant General Donna Martin, by General McConville, by General Garrett, retired, right? And even Judge Robert Shook, who all of a sudden had to leave El Paso real quick. What about the warrants? Where are all the warrants? We were lied about the warrants. Our house was illegally searched without a warrant. And those warrants that we requested from Judge Robert Shook about, the autopsies, about going and picking up the body parts, that all requires a warrant, probable cause, and warrant to search an area. He could answer those. He didn't. Why not? Because they're covering up the murder of my son. They're covering up the murder of Richard, and then they try to sanitize everything in his record. They try to clean, they already erased the key witness from the file. So then they tried to sanitize it by taking out the retaliation that they gave him that was just totally unjust, for nothing, for being a whistleblower. That's what it was for, being a whistleblower. And you see, now we're making a circle back to Tom Kane, that Mr. Thomas Kane is saying that the command on Fort Bliss is working outside of the law, and they are criminal, and they are using retaliatory methods, again, as a weapon. They're using retaliation as a weapon. That's what he's saying here. Now, Thank you very much. We know that. You're confirming what we know because we've been 1,000 days, day in and day out, burning the midnight oil, right? Doing this research, proving yay or nay on Richard, and let me on every accusation that they put forth on Richard. We have gone through everything. And Richard looks so good, y'all. He did something remarkable as a young man. He stayed clean. Absolutely remarkable that he got through that ugliness and he stuck to the principles that our family have stuck to, that he knows. He did not let them groom him. Now, did they rape him? Maybe. I mean, if they're going to do what they did to him, sure, they'd probably add rape. I mean, these are very sick people. And did they mentally mess with him? Absolutely. That was part of the retaliation. Totally. Um, totally. So one of the I just it's heartbreaking. It is so heartbreaking to know what they did to him. And he is a testament to our family. And people don't understand this, but our family is very attached to the military. We have long connections to the military. I mean, my husband, 30-year vet. My dad, 23-year vet. My father-in-law, over 20-year vet. Long history. And we've made friends, and those friends have been very good to us. Very good to us with the connections in the military and of the military and about the military. And these are high connections with more than a half a dozen of 4-star generals. So they understand what we have as 4-star generals right now. And, anyway, it has given us good intel coming out of Fort Bliss and letting us have an insight there with Park University and with Thomas Kane. Now, I want to say one more thing about Thomas Kane because he knew about the July 22nd, 2020 CID notarized vile complaint confession. It was really a confession by Leilani Hart. He knew that. He knew what was going on. He knew about the January 2022 CID complaint by our key witness. He absolutely knew because that complaint was given to Commander Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe. And it's the commanding general of Fort Bliss has to work together with the security of Fort Bliss, the chief of security of Fort Bliss. So that makes 2 major complaints about Leilani Hart. And then we're hearing now from the inside of Fort Bliss that she caused a lot of trouble at Park University. So and he works there. And he works there and knows the students, and the students know the teachers. So he absolutely knew about the troubles that Leilani Hart was causing at Park University. And we wrote him for an open records request, and he illegally shelved it, buried it, did not respond, which is illegal, a federal offense. Now, why would he want to break a federal law to not respond to a family that needs open records to search for their missing soldier son? Why would he want to do that? Is he implicating himself in tampering with surveillance videos? Damaging surveillance videos? Destroying them? Not wanting to tell us what's going on at the gates? Not wanting to tell us about meetings that surveillance picked up and recorded? Or maybe different suspects in certain key places that, he he didn't want to get that out. That's part of the cover up. So let's, is that why? Did those things happen? Is that why he doesn't even take the risk to respond to us? He rather risk breaking a federal law and have, maybe the command backing him up? No, I don't know. I don't know. I think there's a lot of questions here, and I don't think that this letter, as wonderful as it is to help us, because it backs up from, the chief of security of Fort Bliss, what we have been saying for a long time, that they are working outside the law, they're criminal, they're retaliatory, they're obstructing justice, they're impeding our due process. From the very beginning, we've been saying there's something stinky, and then lately I've been saying it's these 44 four-star generals, and I'm like getting hit. There's so much protection around these generals. Why? They need to be held accountable. When you're in high positions like that, you should be held more accountable than even a junior enlisted. Absolutely. Because you're entrusted with all of this equipment, all of these weapons, all of this ammunition. You're entrusted with our most valuable assets, the training of our most valuable assets. You need to be held accountable, and you need to be held to scrutiny, right? Because you're on American dime. Fraud, waste, and abuse, and you can do fraud, waste, and abuse at a much larger um, monies, much larger capacity than any, junior enlisted. And yet they get the protection. And the likes of Richard, the likes of Asia Graham, the likes of the 11 that drank from the sealet, the likes of so many that are getting groomed and trained to suicide, or groomed into these sex cults, or put into these unjust wars and getting blown up. And this is absolutely a general problem, because they have the military behind them. And we have to straighten this up, because the service members clearly, because they're not re-upping, what do you call it, re-enlisting, because they're not wanting to even enlist in the military. It shows that the word is getting out, that the leadership stinks, and they don't want to be part of it. Because with generals like this, who needs enemies? They're the worst type of enemies because they're like the Trojan horse, right? They weaponize the tools that we give them against their very own, and the word is getting out, and that it's exactly what happened to Richard. They weaponized themselves against Richard. Major General Clem Coward absolutely weaponized the tools that we have entrusted to him against our son Richard. And then they use the authority and the tools that we have paid for them to have. They use that to cover up the murder and the remains of our son. And if that's not the case, where is our letter? Where is a letter from General McConville? Where's a phone call? We don't even get a phone call from him. Not that we want a phone call from him. We want a letter. We don't want the charm school anymore. They can charm, charm, charm. Because they go to charm school. They're all political. We want an official letter. And it seems that the same people ordering Thomas Kane and letting Thomas Kane get away with not responding to our open records request. I mean, not even an email back to say thank you so much for your request. I'll get back to you. Not even that. It is totally illegal. It's totally criminal. And now he's written this letter because I think he knows that it is big, and that the Major General Eisenhower now is, you know, we'll see what he does. Is he going to rub shoulders with Sean Bernabe and McConville in this cover up, or is he going to do the right thing and give us our son's remains? Expose this and do the right thing. Because to take a soldier and to place him when you have promised him that you're going to be an army of one, that you're going to be all you can be, and you place him inside of a criminal syndicate, and he whistleblows and you don't even give him whistleblower protection, but that the same person that he's whistleblowing to is part of the criminal syndicate, he doesn't even know it, the CID, the CPS. They have people working in both of those that are not friendlies. Yeah, it is. See what else you have here. Cats on here. Patricia, represent yourself and sue Fort Bliss Army. Go online. Um, well, we have to see who's all culpable here, and our intention was never to sue. Our intention has always been to find out where our son is and what happened to our son. And it has become diabolical. And it has become a situation where we fear for the lives of our service members. We fear for their safety because if the director of emergency services on Fort Bliss did this in Richard's case, knew this was going on, knew about Leilani Hart at the CID, knew about Leilani Hart with her CID and FBI complaints, knew about Leilani Hart's household, knew about the rape of the child because of his connections with the children's psychologist, all this stuff, because he has to work with that emergency intake center. I mean, at least that's what our intel is saying from within Fort Bliss. Um, if he knows about that connection, and then he knows about what's going on at Park University because he works there and the trouble she's causing there. And I'm telling you, I talked to the notary public, and he said, he even, well, I don't know if I should tell the whole story, but he's like the troublemaker, okay, troublemaker. So so you have the connection in the JAG too, but she's friends with the director of emergency services, and she's such a troublemaker, and he's protecting her. Why is he protecting her? Why then de facto is then he's protecting Dallas Hart? Is he protecting James Hart? Right? Especially when we have a key witness against her. And we've asked her to come on. And even Tom can clarify all of this up. Mr. Thomas King can clarify all this up by calling. But you see, they know they're angry. They're angry because the 44 four-star generals got him into this situation. And instead of being angry at me, okay, because since they're not responding to my husband and I, since they're not responding after yesterday, there's no calls, then that means they're angry. We saw it with the paralegal. And instead of being angry with me, they need to be angry with the 44 four-star generals for them not doing their duty and cultivating a criminal syndicate on their installations, because it's not just Fort Bliss, it's also Fort Hood, it's also Fort Stewart, and now, Fort Liberty. They're all getting renamed. Fort Cavazos, they're all getting renamed, but the same problem exists still because they put Lieutenant General, they gave him a star, and then they put him at Fort Hood, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, after he obstructed justice and covered up the brutal murder of a soldier. What, to protect Fort Bliss? Really? That's not, no, that's not right. That's so inhumane. And the soldiers get it. And they're breaking down by their absolutely stunningly evil decisions. Like, who are we gonna protect? The pedophiles, the child porn makers, the watchers, the child rapists, the who are we gonna pick? Them, or a distinguished honor graduate for basic training in AIT that's a whistleblower that wants to aspire, that wants to go into law enforcement and actually hold the law of the land and serve the law of the land. And what these generals have chosen are the pedophiles, are the child porn, are the crooked investments, probably offshore, probably part of the import outport export import export. And whatever's going on there at Park University, I don't understand what's going on at Park University. Um, and I hope that they clarify that with us. I really do, because I just don't understand how Lonnie Hart can make so much trouble and know that this is in the news and nobody called, nobody wanted to try to get that $150,000 award for information that will lead to finding Richard, um, especially when it comes to the complaints already put in. They absolutely have some information. And I don't know how this is all connected to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but it is. It is. And they should get on the horn too. So they should get on the horn too. It is the fear. The fear is what keeps people from calling, and they're afraid to lose their retirement. They're afraid to lose their jobs. And the thing is if they're bringing down the country, um, and they're opening us up to being attacked from the outside. I mean, if we're going to have that weak of a military, absolutely our national security is threatened. And you have, other countries that would love to have this country. They would love to have it. We have oil. We have oil underground. Maybe that's why they won't let us drill for oil. They're wanting to save it. But oil, the ground makes oil. All of this stuff, like it's a limited resource, is all fooey. Okay? The ground makes oil. It's as simple as that. And any geologist knows it. It's already out there. If you research it, it's already out there. I found it very easily all over the place. And yet, the media doesn't make a big to do out. It doesn't educate the populace that it's a readily available, wonderful fuel source, and they want to make money in some other ways. It's always about these business plans. It's never about the health and welfare of our country. So once we wake up as a people and as the vast military, because even though we have 44 four-star generals and admirals that have betrayed us and are serving foreign and domestic enemies, we still have a vast amount of service members that do want to honor their oath, that do want to defend the Constitution, do want to have a free country, do want to have a righteous country. And so, that's who we're reaching out to let them know and, to warn them. Do not let the asymmetric warfare tactics put those swirly things in your eyes and hypnotize you into a culture of sex cults and drug abuse and alcohol abuse and, uh, you know, women abuse, treating, um, because, whose bright idea was to make the barracks co-ed, right? Whose bright idea was that? They're really setting up women to be raped and sexually harassed when you stick them in with 9 to 1, 9 to 1 at the least. Most of the time, it's way more than that. Um, Men to woman. They don't even want to acknowledge that there are men and acknowledge that there are women. And by doing that, they put so many of our women in harm's way. So, because you're talking about young people, they're full of vim and vigor and they're away from home. And they need mentorship, they need morality, they need esprit de corps, they need a purpose. And that's why they joined to serve and have a purpose with esprit de corps and those in uniform that they can look up to. Not a Michael Ruggiero, not a Jay Pollan, not a Jake Jakovitz. These NCOs, they miss they were they were they got caught up in those swirly eyes, right? They got caught up. They got caught up in the culture, in the very bad culture. So, which is very destructive to our country. But they're just little players compared to these generals that can really make things happen. And the Congress and, like the Secretary of the Army, in my estimation, Secretary of Defense, they're just icing. They're just a facade. They can't do anything without the military. The whole COVID thing couldn't have happened without the military. No war could happen without the military. All that smuggling they do on American dimes could not happen without the military. Whatever trafficking they do can't happen without the military. That's their free transportation. That's their free logistics right there for their criminal syndicate. And so they couldn't do it without the protection of the military. So, that's why, people say, well, what about what about the president? What about Congress? What about um, the Secretary of the Army, the Secretary of Defense? What about them? And I'm like, look, they're not generals. Generals are different. They have a very different position. They're kind of like judges. I think they're even more powerful than judges, these generals. And judges have a lot of power. Um, and, I'm not the smartest person when it comes to all this, but I get this. When you have guns and you have bombers and you have snipers and you have ammo and you have vehicles and you've got the most valuable assets at your command, you're pretty darn powerful. And I really realized it when the Secretary of the Army kind of flipped off Senator Cruz. And I was like, whoa, wow, we know really the hierarchy now. We know the hierarchy now. So, all right, everyone. It's Sunday night. And, just pray for Richard and pray for Team Farm Richard Halliday. Pray for our witnesses. Pray for our alliance of intel there in Fort Bliss and in the military that we have. Pray for them to continue to receive the intel to get to the bottom of this. Absolutely pray to God, glorify Him for getting us through these 3 years plus. It has been absolutely a journey that could not have happened without God sustaining us. And, today's readings were a good tree gives good fruit. You know them by their fruit. And pray that we can glorify God in this and deliver the good fruit of justice, of liberty, of goodwill to our service members that are trapped under these criminal 44 four-star generals and admirals. And I repeat that a lot because it's very hard for people to believe that our service members, our children, and yes, they're adults, but these are the children of our country that chose to serve. This is a volunteer military. Are trapped under these 44 four-star generals. And I believe that even Thomas Kane, in his very, very powerful position as chief of security of Fort Bliss, could not have done what he did. And probably would not have done, because I believe that he messed with surveillance footage. Okay? I'm just going to tell you that. And I think that with this letter, he is putting the general that's there after Bernabe on notice that Fort Bliss was acting and is acting outside of the law. I think that's what he was doing. But he's also implicating himself, okay? Which, is that a courageous thing to do? Is that a courageous thing to do? I don't know. It's so schizophrenic. Why didn't he call us? Why didn't he answer us? Why didn't he write us an email? Why doesn't he have Richard 6? Why doesn't he tell us what happened on Fort Bliss on the 23rd of July, 2020? Because he could tell us. That's his job. But I don't think it would have gotten out of hand like this with Leilani Hart, because you have to remember, Leilani Hart, there's a witness, not good stuff, y'all. And nothing was done. Well, something was done. She was protected. So that means she has something on them, or she has some kind of connections. And yet, the 44 four-star generals and admirals didn't want to clean it up. McConville didn't want to clean this mess up. He ordered a staged task force find Richard Halliday, where the Army would come in an unofficial manner, not in uniform, with no operational order for the task force, which is absolutely fraud, waste, and abuse at a huge level, would send Lieutenant General Donna Martin, who is now the IG of the Army, down to conduct this fraud against the family of a missing soldier. And we're sitting there, and all of those law enforcement officers that were there, DEA, ATF, DES, FBI, CID, oh gosh, Rob has the whole list. I'm going to list it off. Who was there? None of them stood up to or spoke up to tell us what was going on, that they were smearing Richard behind the scene, creating a narrative that he was some kind of El Capone, which is absolutely not true. They have nothing. Not one person told us he was a whistleblower. They were all in on it, y'all. They were all in on it. And General McConville ordered it that way. Ordered it. So when you get away with crimes against humanity, you just don't stop there. You do things like this. And at that time, they already knew that Richard was cut up. They already knew. And not one person in that group had the humanity and the decency and the fear of God to speak up. Not one of them. And the really amazing thing about that meeting is we brought a priest with us to pray over these people while while we were there. We brought a priest. I cannot get that meeting out of my head. What a betrayal. What a sad, sad indication of what our military and our institutions have become on our dime. How dare they want us to pay for them any longer? How dare they? They need to go and learn a different a lot of them need to be arrested. And how dare they get angry at me or Team 5 Richard Halliday and retaliate when they didn't look after. They made all these promises. And here Richard is a young kid, a young man, yes, young man, 18, 19, 20. And they get mad at me. They get mad at Team 5 Richard Halliday. And then they want me to pay for their retirement. And they laugh at that. I don't want to pay for it. I don't want that. I don't want their kind of service. I don't want them to train our children to suicide, to rape them, to groom them to pedophilia, to groom them with their pornography and their foul life, to groom them to be mentally ill and have to be on medication, to serve in wars that are so unjust that they come back and they have seizures and PTSD. And they become violent. I don't want their kind of service. I'd rather take my chances without that kind of military, without that kind of law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies. I'd rather take my chance without the service of the Thomas Kanes and the Lieutenant General Sean Bernabes and the General McConvilles that cost us so much money and misery. absolute misery and no safety. And no safety. And they allow Vanessa Guillen to be chopped up. They did, y'all, they did not want to find her. They did not expect her remains to be found. All right? And there, the remains of Vanessa Guillen were not found because they interrogated Aguilar, right? The female. It was an act of God that Vanessa Guillen's remains were found. And it's that fact that I know that the stars in their course fought against Sisera, and that we got this letter from Thomas Paine. It is just sticking up for what is right, sticking up for what is right, day in and day out. And somehow, even when you can't see it, when you don't know what's going to happen, something, justice happens. You can't stop it. The lies cannot be sustained. The ugliness cannot be sustained, which is so glorious, isn't it? Because God is going to shine his beauty no matter what evil man does. He's going to come through. And that is a wonderful truth, a beautiful truth. And justice is people call it karma. Justice is going to flow through the land, whether they try to hide it or not. Because they can't stop God, see? They can't stop him. They can't stop his beauty and his glory and his justice. They can't stop him. And so in his time, all this is going to fall apart. Their facade that they've put up of lies, of deceit, of crime, of ugliness, it's all going to come crumbling down. It's already starting to come crumbling down. And they're going to be gnashing their teeth and crying because they have fallen into the abyss. This very dark abyss where they're like, ah, and it's, the retaliation that we're getting, it just reminds me of these paintings, because I love oil paintings and everything, where they picture hell with these creatures that are like, because they're mad, they're angry. They're angry that they could not stop God's tide of righteousness and beauty and light and love and what is good and glorious in this world. They, they can't do it. So that's why that Magnificat in my faith, in the evening we pray the Magnificat, because that's what it's all about. Mary's song, that's what it's all about. It's about that beautiful flow of God's justice and mercy and glory and provisions. So I think, well, I know it's my faith that we're on the winning side. So Richard's on the winning side. Richard's on the winning side. He wanted to protect the children and the young mothers. He did. I can tell you that right now. And he paid the ultimate price, but he's on the winning side. And that's a great comfort for me. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. And yeah, go to sleep. Good night, everybody. Good night. Good night, everyone. And thank you. God bless. I'll be back tomorrow, God willing. Bye bye.